Yes, I think we're in live broadcast mode. Yeah, I think we are. That's what YouTube is telling me. Thanks for participating. What a day or what a night, depending on where you are. American elections are turning to be into a barn burner, and the official results probably won't be available for a few more minutes. I'm going to start slow because I want to make sure the sound is fine, and if it is not, then my producer will call me in a few minutes. In the meantime, I want to tell you exactly what I'm going to talk about. First of all, I am not going to wax poetic on the American elections and the historic significance of this race, etc., etc. In fact, I'm going to spend only a couple of minutes on the elections. I am simply going to repeat the most likely scenarios as I read and understood from financial press like Bloomberg, Financial Times, Yahoo, and CNBC, etc., etc. Then I'm gonna move on to the most likely scenario and explain how that might affect the world economy and the emerging markets. And finally, I'm going to spend most of the time on Turkey. I titled this broadcast Turkey, Putin, and Biden because if Trump is reelected, not much is going to change as far as go between Turkey and the United States. But if Biden wins, which at this point press sources tell me is more likely, though not certain, then of course Turkey and Putin will have a long winter ahead of them. The importance of Putin, of course, is that Erdogan and Putin used to have a very close friendship, which has frayed at the edges over the last few months. That's something I'm going to be talking about a few minutes, and what Biden might propose to President Erdogan and how his response might be. Finally, I think Turkish monetary policy is awaiting the outcome of these results. Whether Turkey is going to raise rates or not depends on who is going to win the elections. Okay, so far no call from my producer, so I assume the sound is fine and I am officially launching this broadcast. As I've said, I'm not giving you my personal opinions. American politics is too far removed from me. I can only tell you what I read in the financial press. Even though it might take a few days for final results to be announced and certified, it appears, or I am told, that the path for Biden to claim victory is much shorter than Trump. As far as the House of Representatives go, that's obvious. Democrats won, though not with the kind of majority they had hoped. As far as Senate goes, I understand Democrats will not be winning, though I don't quite understand how people can opine about the Senate simply because Georgia will probably hold two runoff races for its senators. And right now, the count on my screen is 47 to 47. So there is a possibility that Democrats do capture Senate with a very tiny majority, say one vote. I don't know. Obviously, if Trump wins and the Senate remains with Republicans, then for the world or for the markets for Turkey, not much change will change. So that's not really an interesting topic as far as the objective broadcast goes. If Biden wins, we need to see whether Senate stays with Republicans or Democrats. And that's where my discussion about the future starts. Let's take the scenario which the press sources tell me is the most likely, which is a Biden win but divided Congress. That scenario is not the most positive for the American or the world economy. Biden would like to pass a huge fiscal aid package. The Senate Republicans, if they control the majority, would probably want to pass a much more modest one. Moreover, there is the specter of another closure of the federal government if the Republicans retain Senate majority because of the debt ceiling. All in all, it appears to me that in the most likely scenario of Biden winning but Senate remaining with Republicans, there will be an aid package, but it's going to be much more modest than what Biden would have done with a majority in the Senate. Furthermore, with Biden in power, it's much easier for Democratic governors and mayors to declare curfews and lockdowns. Obviously, people's opinion about these change, but to the best of my understanding of what the medical community is saying, and judging from what's happening in Europe, lockdowns and curfews are absolutely necessary to prevent the faster spread of the virus. In any case, even if a government doesn't order a lockdown or curfew, there is something I call the voluntary stay home syndrome. If people read that COVID-19 is getting really bad out there, they voluntarily stay home and use e-commerce or watch, Netflix instead of going out to the movie theaters. So under a Biden scenario, it would be easier to control the virus and to mitigate its efforts, and that would probably slightly lessen the possibility of America going into recession in the winter. America going into recession in winter is a disaster scenario for the world because, again, the best forecasts available to me are that EU or Eurozone and UK will spend the winter months and possibly the second quarter of 2021 in recession. In that case, there will only be one growth engine left in the world, which is China. China is holding up pretty well, though the institution I work for, Global Source Partners, they do have two China teams. And my understanding of the situation in China is that the economic recovery is largely sustained by government spending and that consumers have not yet gotten over their fears of COVID-19. Most importantly, China is still reliant on exports in a scenario where the United States is not buying much from China and the EU is in recession. Then China's contribution to the world growth is going to be extremely low. This is really a scary scenario for emerging markets for two reasons. A, because of the uncertainty in American politics and the COVID-19 outlook, the dollar might appreciate. Since the entire world has borrowed huge quantities of money in dollars, a stronger dollar means that it's becoming more difficult to service these debts. Secondly, if United States and EU are in recession, the oil market, the energy complex is going to tank. We could see Brent, which is what Turkey uses, what most of Europe uses, go down to $30 or even below. Most of the emerging nations are producers of energy and commodities. Therefore, they do not benefit from low energy prices as much as some of the developed countries. So you have a situation where the possibility of a stronger dollar and lower commodity prices, as well as low global demand, completely hitting emerging markets from several directions. In that case, even though the world is awash in cash and Fed and the ECB will probably be printing more money, there's a strong possibility that that money will stay in the home countries and not go to emerging markets. Now move on to Turkey. Turkey has decoupled from emerging markets for a long time because of our own political problems and economic mismanagement, but still, it matters how emerging markets are doing. Put it this way: if emerging markets are doing fine, if there is risk appetite and emerging market assets are being purchased, then there's a stronger likelihood that some of that money will be coming to Turkey. If emerging markets are in a bad shape, it's pretty obvious that no money will be coming to Turkey. Of course, we also need to consider the implications of a bear market in energy prices. Turkey is one of those few countries which are not blessed at all with any natural resources or hydrocarbons. We do have a discovery, but I'm sorry, in Black Sea, but getting natural gas from that dome is going to take 3, maybe 5 years. I'm really sorry. I just had a Turkish broadcast and my throat is getting tired from talking too much. It's quite possible that if Brent declines below $30, Turkey will hold out much better compared to the scenario I discussed below. Nevertheless, uh, moving on to Turkey, a Trump victory is much better news, or so it is predicted by Turkish pundits. The Congress is primed to pass a CAATSA sanctions bill against Turkey. That's the bill for enemies of the United States or whatever. And the main reason would be because Turkey has purchased S-400 anti-missile weapons batteries from Russia, which Americans consider a violations of good faith and really not befitting of a NATO partner. Now, if Trump wins, even if a CAATSA sanctions bill is passed and a veto is overridden, it is very likely that Trump will select the least hurtful sanctions on the menu that CAATSA provides. So, Turkey might be slapped with CAATSA sanctions under Trump, but probably the lightest, the most trivial sanctions will be selected by the president, so it won't hurt Turkey too much. In general, it's easier to believe that life would be easier for Putin and President Erdogan if Trump remains the president. Of course, I don't want to talk for hours about possible scenarios. There is also Trump winning but losing the Senate. That would provide further complications. But let's just stick to the main scenario and don't digress too much. Now, all the sources I read tells me that if Biden wins, he's going to go after Putin. I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. I'm just parroting what I read in the American press. And probably the Biden campaign against Russia will be in terms of sanctions. So Biden is going to try to hurt Russia through financial sanctions and maybe even sanctions on oligarchs or even Russia's energy exports. That obviously is a problem for Russia, but not for Turkey. For Turkey, if Biden wins, the main question is making a choice between Russia and the United States. A few months ago, I would have said that choice has already been made. That even if Biden picks the harshest items on the CAATSA sanctions menu and threatens to wreak havoc in the Turkish economy, Mr. Erdogan would stand fast and defy Mr. Biden because he had a very strong relationship with Mr. Putin, which provides political backing, if not economic backing. But that situation has changed. This is why the title includes Putin's name. Turkey and Russia, not, strangely, have discovered their historical rivals that they don't get along on any subject. In Libya, Russia supports the General Haftar government or Haftar. We support the Tripoli government, the Al Sarraj government. We have claims to our continental shelf in East Med as well as to the continental shelf of Cyprus because of Zurich and London agreements as per in 1960. Obviously, these are disputed, and there is going to be hectic negotiations with EU and Greece to see what happens in East Med. But what I'm saying is, Putin hasn't really come out and supported Turkey's case in Cyprus or Eastern Med. We are now close allies with Ukraine, which obviously doesn't really appeal to Putin. Crimea is traditionally, uh, if has kinship with Turkey, so we don't like Putin taking over Crimea. That's another point. And finally, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict that's between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Russia traditionally has been more supportive of Armenia, though it has not neglected Azerbaijan. This time, Turkey has come down very strongly on the side of the Azerbaijani army. And again, to the extent that I can follow the news from the international press, Azeri army is making serious gains into territories held by Armenia. So far, these are districts or rayons outside Nagorno-Karabakh, but nevertheless, unless Russia intervenes on the side of Armenia, the consensus or the majority view is that Azerbaijan may even recapture, or occupy or liberate. I don't really care. I don't want to be political. Part of Nagorno Karabakh, and that also would put Putin and Erdogan against each other. Finally, in Syria, Russia wants us to pull out so Assad can declare a victory, which would be a disaster for Turkey. That unfortunately was a digression, but it was necessary to drive home the point that Erdogan and Putin don't look eye to eye anymore. They disagree on many viewpoints, and compared to a few years ago when a Russian embargo would have killed the Turkish economy, that's no longer the case. Russian tourists are not coming, and we no longer need their natural energy. So if Biden makes a decent proposal, offers a compromise, it is much easier for Erdogan to accept that compromise or that agreement. There's another problem with Mr. Erdogan. By the time Biden takes office and cleans house and gets to the Middle East, which is probably going to be March, Turkish economy is very likely to be in a much weaker condition than it is today. Turkey staged a fairly strong recovery in the third quarter, but as we reach the fourth quarter, our economic situation increasingly resembles that of EU. There is rampant COVID-19 outbreak. In EU, the problem is governments are not that willing to spend for each other, and monetary policy is much more circumspect than in the United States. In Turkey, the budget deficits are already very large, and the government's ability to borrow is extremely limited because we have a very small financial system, and our borrowing costs abroad have gone up significantly. Turkey's central bank, unlike many emerging market central banks, cannot print money easily because that excess liquidity seeps into the currency market and causes currency depreciation. Whether central bank allows the currency to depreciate or whether it hikes interest rate doesn't make a difference. Both are recessionary. Simply because a weaker currency hurts consumer sentiment and hurts the economic activity of Turkish corporates, which are heavily indebted in dollars. So, Whether central bank raises rates and chokes off credit growth, thus causing a recession, or allows the dollar to go up anywhere it wants to, but doesn't touch the rates, the outcome probably won't change. It's either sudden death or slow death. The point I'm trying to make is probably in the fourth quarter and for the rest of the winter, Turkey will be in recession and in dire need of foreign financial capital. To the extent an agreement with Biden would help Turkey to attract Western capital, Mr. Erdogan has an incentive to cut a deal with him. Nevertheless, I must remind my audience that 90% of Turkish experts think Biden is bad for Turkey and he's not going to give Mr. Erdogan much of an option and immediately attack Turkey with sanctions. Or Mr. Erdogan would not take any deal, any offer from Biden, continue to defy him, and thus Turkey will be slapped with, with Katsa sanctions. To me, it's not that obvious. To me, I see a compromise between Biden and Erdogan under two conditions. A, Turkey should not operationalize the S 400s before Biden makes an offer. B, Congress doesn't push Biden to immediately impose sanctions on Turkey. Okay, that's a complicated story, but it will probably unfold in the first and second quarter of 2021, not immediately. The immediate story is whether the choice of the American president would affect Turkish monetary policy. For the last 2 days, there has been rumors in the social media, two rumors actually, which are completely contradictory. First, Turkish central bank is getting ready to have an extraordinary monetary policy council meeting to hike rates. B, Turkey's finance and treasury minister, Mr. Berat Albayrak, had a behind the doors get together with AKP deputies where he said, we're not going to touch the exchange rate. It can go anywhere it wants to. The corollary of that is that central bank will not be allowed to raise rates. If you ask my opinion, the likelihood of central bank raising rates, and not by 25 basis points, but by something like 400, 500 basis points, is much higher if Biden wins the presidency. On the other hand, if Trump wins, Turkey will probably not touch the rates and allow the currency to find a new equilibrium over time. I'm not going to debate which one is better for Turkey, but for those of you who have investments in Turkey, I think it's much better for the central bank to hike rates immediately because that would probably allow Turkish lira to appreciate, some foreign capital to come into Turkey. It will also help the heavily indebted corporates, and it could also push interest rates lower because as foreigners come in, they buy government bonds or they give Turkey loans, which increases the flow of money in Turkey. Therefore, these elections are probably as critical for Turkey as it is for the United States. I don't know how much Mr. Putin cares. After all, he has huge natural resources and can withstand American sanctions. Turkey is not in the same position. Turkey needs to know who wins the presidency. And if Trump wins, well, even though I don't fully agree, many experts think Turkey has an easier path to economic and political recovery. If Biden wins, then Mr. Erdogan will have a lot of thinking to do, and Turkey will probably have to raise interest rates and adopt more conventional economic policies. Oh my God, I have talked 25 minutes without interruption. I want to thank you for watching this broadcast, and whatever happens, I hope it's best for the American and Turkish people. This is Atilla Yeşilada saying good night from Istanbul for Real Turkey channel. Stay well, stay safe.